My name's Father Ed Nadali. I'm over at the Pastoral Center. It used to be called St. Thomas Seminary. And tonight we're going to have a conversation with you and myself. I have a telephone number, 860-321-7405. That's 860-321-7405. And if you'd like to ask me a question, I've got an answer for everything. Or if I'd like to ask you a question, if you call in, I'll find out who you are and like to ask you a few questions. So the point of the program is to have a little dialogue, a little communication between myself and my audience. Now, if you are listening, I just found out that if you type in Facebook and then type in nutmeg.com, then the people can get it on Facebook. So you can tell all your Facebook lovers to check it out and give me a call. But I was looking at a video before I came here. It's called Abortion Procedures, What You Need to Know. And I hope that I'll be able to show this DVD the next time I have the show. But what gets me, I've never seen such a wonderful, thorough, scientific, animated explanation of every procedures of abortion that goes on. And it's very revealing and very educational. And the program was done by a doctor, Dr. Anthony Levantino. He performed 1,200 abortions. And his wife couldn't have children. So they decided to adopt a child. But in the meantime, he was making $800 abortion, and he had 1,200 abortions. So if I take 1,200 and multiply $800, you got 0.00016.9. So he made $960,000, almost $1 million on those abortions. He mentioned $800 abortion. There may be more or less, depends, I suppose. But his child, he adopted a child, and then right after he got adopted a child, he ended up, his wife became pregnant, and he had a child. And once when he had a 3-semester abortion, and we saw that he was pulling out an arm, all of a sudden it hit him. And then shortly after that, his adopted son was killed in a car accident. And all of a sudden, he began to realize that no matter what size the child is, whether it's this size, or this size, it's still a child. And he's changed completely. And it's a wonderful educational DVD. And I hope that I'll be able to show it the next show that we have. But in the meantime, what question do you have for me, and what question do I have for you? My question is, what is your question? And if you you'd like to get a call, just call me at 860-321-7405. 860-321-7405. Now, this morning, I had Mass with the priests, and I had a question. I've got these billboards all over the place, and I was coming out of Bethlehem last Friday, and I was just turning on to, from 8, I had one on 8, I Love You, Mary, and then I was turning on to 84, and then I saw the digital that I had up there, and the digital says, Merry Christ Mass. Most people don't realize that the word Christmas really was put together from Christ Mass. And I have a digital on 84, 95, and 91. And I was so excited that I saw that. Then if you go down about 5 miles on 84 going east towards Hartford, you'll see the billboard that says, I Love You, Mary. And if you get into Hartford itself, there's another billboard that says, Jesus, forgive me. And I've had that one up for about 3 or 4 months. The one Mary I've had about a couple of months. And the one Merry Christ Mass I'll have up till January 16th. because most people don't realize that we're still in the Christmas season. Christmas starts on Christmas Eve, December 24th. It goes through Christmas Day, and then it goes through the Feast of Holy Families. That's the first Sunday after Christmas. Then after that, it goes to Feast of Three Kings, which we just had yesterday. And then it ends up on December 16th on the Feast of the Baptism of Jesus. So there are manifestations of Jesus as divine. First, we have it here at the Three Kings, where the Three Kings came, and Epiphany means manifestation or revelation of something unknown. Like I had something in my pocket. Now you don't know what it is, but I have a epiphany. When I show you my wallet, then I have that epiphany. I have a telephone call, so I think it came from heaven. Let's see if I push this. You're on the air with Father Ed.
Hi, Father. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
You were talking about your billboards, and I've seen a lot of them in my travels throughout the state, and I was just wondering if you've gotten any feedback from people, any responses, any questions, or how do people react to your billboards?
Well, I would probably have to have a 2-hour show to answer all the questions, but I'll give you a couple examples. Just the last one I got, the lady called up very upset, and I said, "What's the matter?" And she said, "I committed adultery, and I'm Catholic, I'm married, and a lot of people go to the gym for exercise. A lot of people go to the gym to pick up someone." So this guy picked up this woman who obviously must have had a marriage problem, and so she says, "I've got to go to confession." And I said, "Where do you live?" "I'm making up this city." So let's say it was Wallingford, but it wasn't Wallingford, another place. And she says, "I need to go to confession." I said, "Well, I know a restaurant and a diner and a restaurant on Route 5. And she went to confession there. See, the man that was having adultery with her was divorced. He had nothing to lose. Now, she had her husband, her family, her kids, her whole life. And she was panicky that somebody may find out about it. So that's one. And then another called me. These are just recent calls. This was a mother who was very upset about her daughter. Her daughter's addicted with drugs, and she doesn't know what to do. So then another person called up and said, "Well, I haven't gone to confession in 42 years. I said, "Well, come to the seminary or come to Bloomfield," and he went to confession. Someone else called me up and said, "I haven't gone to church." I said, "Where do you live?" And she said, he said, "I live in West Hartford." I said, "Well, go to St. Thomas on Farmington Avenue." Someone else called up and said, "I haven't gone to church for a long time, and I want to go back." And I said, "Well, where do you live?" They said, "In Manchester." I said, "Well, go to St. Bridget's." Then another one called up and said, "I really need to go back to church." And I said, "Where do you live?" "South end of Hartford." "Well, go to St. Augustine's." So many times I get young kids calling me up. I have a billboard called "Jesus Forgive Me." And they'll call me up, and a lot of kids call me up and say, "Well, will Jesus forgive me?" Now, they want to be forgiven on the phone, but I can't forgive on the phone. I can pray on the phone, but I can't forgive. So I encourage them to go to confession. Another person says, "Well, I go to God. I go to confession right to God." I says, "Well, how do you know you're forgiven?" And I was talking to her. I said, "Have you got any children?" And they said, "Yes." I said, "Well, how does your child know when he's bad on purpose?" And that's what a sin is, being bad on purpose or refusing to love. How does your a child know that he's forgiven? When you've had him in timeout and you let him out of timeout, what do? You put your arms around him and say, "Honey, I forgive you," or you kiss your child. Now, if you never hugged your child and never kissed your child, how in the world would that child ever know that he is forgiven? In other words, you have to get an outward sign to know that you are forgiven. So I explained to this lady who goes right to God, unless God drops off some water to say you're forgiven. I said, Jesus said, whose sins you forgive, they are forgiven. Whose sins you retain, they are retained. Now, another one that I'm still working on, one day I have a billboard on 91 North. It says, Jesus, I trust in you. So the fellow called me up and he says, my house is possessed. So I turned around and I said, well, I'll come over to the house. So I went over to the house. I blessed the house. I said Mass in the house. I said a rosary in the house. I went with holy water. But I saw 9 of his monitors on the computer broken. I saw 8 of his mouses broken. I saw his car had $8,000 damage from some hammer somewhere that the devil hit. And at night he gets hit back in the back of his neck. And then he also, his girlfriend gets slapped on the face and gets a bruise. Clothing is thrown into the toilet. I gave him a rosary and the devil broke it up and threw the beads right into his face. So I've been praying for that guy for a long time, and for his name is Ross and Marianne. And I've been praying for them for a long time, asking God. In fact, every parish right now is saying the a prayer to St. Michael the Archangel, asking him to defeat the power of the devil. So these are just some examples of what I get, but there's never a day that I don't get. One guy called me from, where was it, New Haven. He was a baseball player at that time, or he was a baseball player. I said, if you're on marijuana, you're not starting, and he wasn't starting. So we start talking about the marijuana, how it affects your brains, that it closes part of your brain so your moral behavior shuts down and your emotional behavior never develops. So when you're 31, you start acting like a 15-year-old. So when he said, nobody told me that. I says, if you're on marijuana, then you're drinking, right? And if you're drinking, then you're on pornography. That's what I call the trifecta. So he got all shook up, and I said, you better go get some help, because you're 21 now, and you've been doing it since you're 14 or 15, so that's affected your memory. So those are just some examples of some of the calls I get. One lady, the one that touched me, a lady just got out of St. Francis Hospital, and she was diagnosed at 4th stage cancer. And she saw my billboard, Jesus, I trust in you. And she called me and said, Father, I just found out I have cancer, but your billboard gave me tremendous help. And I had a friend of mine was in the back of a car seeing my billboard that says, Jesus, forgive me. And it was a priest that was behind the car. He saw the passenger in front of him making the sign of the cross. I have no idea, but this is what I do know, that I have over 2 million cars that go by my billboards. Not 2 million different cars, because I can be working in Etna and live in East Hartford, and I go by my billboard, Jesus, forgive me, 5 times. But there's at least 2 million cars, not different cars, but 2 million cars that see my billboard every month. Just one billboard, saying, Jesus, forgive me, on 84 East, that's 55,000 people a week. Multiply that times 4, you got over 200,000. And what happened, there are at least it's just 20% of those 2 million people see those billboards. Every billboard is a prayer. So if you read the billboard, it's a prayer. If you have 2 million cars seeing it, and you have 20% reading it, that's 400,000 people praying on the highway, which is a lot more than people praying in church. Okay?
Okay, Father, thank you very much.
Thanks for calling. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I think we have another one, right? I pushed 2. Hi, you're on with Father Ed.
Yes. Hi, Father. Do you have a mailing list or something? Because you've got a lot of projects going on. And how does somebody find out about the projects? Do you have a newsletter?
Well, I have an email. If people email me at FN, which stands for Father in the Downing, FN Good News, FN Good News at AOL.com. And if they email me, I could send them a lot of literature on what are the things that the Father Nadali Good News Fund does. And you know, I don't know if you heard the caller call me about the different billboards I have. Right now I have 15 billboards around the state, and that's, I know at least 2 million cars see it. The other thing, I've just ordered 5,000 little crosses that I have that says, "I love you, Jesus," and that's going to be 100,000 now that I'll be giving out. And then the other things I've sent at least 8,000 rosaries to Tanzania, to India, and other places where seminarians go out into the villages and they want to bring rosaries to the kids. So I've been sending out, in fact, it's cost me over $1,800 just a mailing cost. One box.
Where do you get the rosary beads then?
Oh, that's a good question. I get them from all over the world, all over the United States. Somebody put my name on a list, and now I get, like I just sent out 17 boxes of rosaries to Tanzania, to the seminary there, and also to a parish. But I also give rosaries to schools here in Connecticut, and parishes too. Like I'll be going to a parish in Waterbury Sunday, and I have a box of rosaries for them. And another man from another parish, St. Timothy's, came. He says, "I'm going to India next month. Do you have any rosaries?" Because I gave him some rosaries for India. But somebody put me on the list, and I'm not exaggerating. I probably got over 75 boxes of rosaries over the time. What I have to do, I send a thank you note, and I put a note in that if you have any roses, send it to Tanzania. But instead of sending it to Tanzania, they send it to me. So so rosaries, crosses, and the work of the communication of Father Nadali Good News Fund is communicating with people. And I just wrote 180 letters to people, thanking them for cooperating with the good news. So it's personal. I was on the phone talking to somebody today. I just gave out 1,600 Advent wreaths. In fact, somebody called me today, "Where are my Advent wreaths?" I sent her 7 in December, but I guess somebody stole them or they got lost because they never came back. But I've given out 1,600 Advent wreaths, at least 10,000 rosaries, it'll be 100,000 crosses, and then personal contact with people. I get a lot of people go to confession because of the billboards, or like here, I'm sure I'll get some calls from this show. So the thing is, what we try to do, I'm on Facebook too. If you go Edmund Nadali, as my brother said, you'll see a lot of other things that I do, or on my website too. But
so you've changed your projects over the years.
Yeah, as time when I was in radio and television myself, I did. But they do a lot of confessions and marriage counseling, and what I do is become a parish without boundaries. Like I got a call from a lady in Naugatuck, "Would you come bless my house?" And I just blessed houses in Bloomfield. And I went to where did I go? I went to New London for a cemetery ceremony for somebody who passed away. So somebody called me from my son called me from Wallingford a few days ago. So I went to the Regency House in Wallingford. So what it is, it's a parish without boundaries, and
so it's for all ages then.
Yeah,
You really.
Yeah, from the womb to the tomb. I've baptized children because of the billboards. I've performed marriage ceremonies because of the billboards. They don't know a priest, so they'll call me and say, "Father, would you marry me?" And I tell them, "You're not my type." But I had one recently. They couldn't get a priest, so they called me. So I had this ceremony. But it's amazing how many people want to get married after they're living together for 5 or 6 years. But whatever. And I remember I had one that wanted to get married on a Sunday. And the rule in the church says you don't get married on a Sunday. So I went to the bishop and said, what would you rather have? 300 kids going to the beach or to a restaurant, or 300 young people at a wedding? So he gave me permission, but I had a problem getting a church because I don't have a church. I'm a priest without a parish. I have a parish without boundaries, but that's my parish without boundaries. So it took me 4 parishes before I got one. I know I got one at St. Joseph's in New Britain, and thanks to my friend Elaine Boycell, she was instrumental in getting me on that program, and I'm indebted. In fact, I owe her a lunch for that. But it cost me money. I went to one priest and said, "Why we are crazy? We'll have weddings on Sunday. They all want to get married." And I said, "George, how many weddings did you have last year?" He had 1, but it took me 4 parishes before I got it. But what I'd like to have Bishop do to change the rule and have people, if they're Catholic but don't want to, like I have somebody right now, a friend of mine, Dom Angelo's son. He lives up in Vermont, and he wants to get married at his house. Now, if you're Catholic, you should be getting married in the Catholic Church. Now, my point is, I'm going to try and get permission. Now, he doesn't knock down the doors to go to Mass, but he's Catholic. So even though he's Catholic, who knows, if I perform the marriage ceremony, then maybe we'll be able to get him and his wife back to church. So I'd like to see that change. See, I could do this with Jewish couples. Jewish family doesn't come into our Catholic Church, so I get permission to go to Aquatough. I've been at colleges. I've been in restaurants, and I've been able to perform a marriage with a rabbi at these places. Now, what I say, if I could do that with the Jewish Catholic couple, why can't I do it with a Catholic couple who's Catholic but doesn't go to church? Well, I just got a announcement that we have to take a break. I guess
all right.
They're tired of listening to me, so that I'm getting a break. Thanks for calling, Pat. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Father. Bye-bye.
Okay, I died and went to purgatory, and now I come back to life. I've resurrected. And thank you for that call, Sister Pat. And she gave some ideas of some of the things that the Father and the Dolly Good News Fund have done. And over the years, one of the big projects we had was we built 102 units of housing in Waterbury. It's called Brookside Housing off of Colonial Avenue. I think it's 36 on Route 8. That was our biggest project. But we work in India, we work in Africa with schools and orphanages. So it goes on and goes on and goes on. So over the years, we given out $13 million for different projects. But I think do we have any calls? And number 1. You're on the air with Father Ed.
Hi, Father Ed. It's Joyce Logan.
Hi, Joyce.
Hi. And I know you've read my book, so I wanted to ask you something. I wanted to say something.
Don't make it too hard.
I will try not to make it too hard. So in my book, Starving Your Fears, I talk about people, and I even mention people that I've worked with who've had terrible anxiety and panic attacks, and it really stops them from living their best life. And that could mean from sitting in church or getting in an elevator or going into a grocery store. And there's that feeling that they just have to get out of there. And it's like a claustrophobic feeling. And they may think, and I'm not sure I really addressed this fully in my book, and that's why I wanted to talk to you about it. They may think they're afraid of looking foolish, and then they can never go back to that store or back to that church or, wherever that place is. And I guess what I wanted to address is at the bottom of all fears, really at the very base of them, it's a fear of ultimate loss of control, which is dying. That is the basis of all fears, if I had to say it in a nutshell. And I think if people really...
Wait, say that again. Say that we just said, the basis of my claustrophobia.
Yeah, basis of all fears are the ultimate fear of dying, because that is the fear of the unknown. It's fear of your ultimate loss of control, where you have nothing to say about it. And it's that anticipatory anxiety about it, whether people really are aware of it or not. There's something in their mind that thinks, what's going to happen to me? I'm going to run out of here. I may have a heart attack. Oh, my God. And if people had faith, and that's why we hear so much that someone or so-and-so may have lived so long, and or they just lived a great life because, oh, I envy their faith. I envy their faith. And I think what they're envying is the fact that they're not afraid to die because they have such a great relationship with God, with Jesus, with whatever they think. It helps them to say, well, if I die, I die. If that's the worst thing that's going to happen to me, that ain't so bad. And I think a lot of people, I certainly fell in that category. When I had all my fears, I go to church and I'm praying for a miracle. God, take this away from me. God, take this feeling away from me. Instead of immersing myself in, well, what am I afraid of? If I believe in God, and I believe it does not end here, and I believe that I never had control, God is the one that has the ultimate control, then I'd be going home. What am I so afraid of?
Well, you're saying, yeah.
You must hear this all the time from people. My goodness, you sit with people who are dying and their family members who are afraid. And I just wondered, what you would say to someone. I think that, what would you say to someone who has a terrible fear of death, and what can they do to get them on track when maybe they're just not there yet with that faith of...
You're saying then one basic problem of starving your fears is a lack of faith and anxiety about dying, and then that shows up in your psychological behavior, you're saying.
Yes.
And
yes.
So I'm thinking of a friend of mine who stopped going to church because he was in the second or third pew, and all of a sudden he got this feeling of being closed in. And I just talked to him a few days ago. I said, did you go to Mass on Christmas? He said, no. And this is a very spiritual guy. And I said, why don't you stand up in the back while all the others who've got claustrophobia and are leaning against the wall. But you're saying underlying that claustrophobia or the fear is a fear of dying?
Yes. It's a fear of the unknown, and the greatest fear of the unknown is dying. And I believe from everyone I've worked with, and I've worked with people for, well over 30 years, that it's the sense that people do go to church and they say, I do have faith, or even, I worked with an atheist, and the atheist said, no, they were fine with that. And I asked, well, what are you afraid of? Well, he was afraid of dying. That was his fear. And I think if people can come to terms with that, come to peace with that, and if they really felt that God loves them, and you're going to be okay, and your family will be okay, if you walk the talk, that your life will be so much better, because there's nothing bad that could happen. You won't fear death. You'll say, well, when that time comes, wow, I'm excited. I'm going to cross over into my next life. I'm going to be home. I'm going to be home. And I really think that's what people struggle with the most, that you can say someone's very spiritual and they go to church, but they still may be living a very fearful life of, how am I going to deal with my spouse dies or my parents die? Or, oh, my God, I hope I don't die. I better not get on the airplane. What if that airplane goes down? And then your world becomes very small. I'm not saying to jump off a mountain and do crazy things. I'm just saying that if you make peace with the fact that we're all going to die, but we don't just die, for those of us who believe, we don't just die and go to blackness and nothing or haunt a house forever. You know, we die to a greater good. We die to really be, our souls to be with the Lord.
We should ordain you a priest. What I tell people is the day you're born, then you begin to die. Because death, and we all have graduation from kindergarten, for high school, college, and then death is our fulfillment, our final graduation to eternal life. But if they see it in your sight, maybe I hope somebody may be watching this who's got claustrophobia, and if they see it in your sight, maybe that will help them. What would you tell person? What would you tell person who has the claustrophobia and can't go to church because of it? And he's a very prayerful man, a very spiritual man, a very believing man. What would you tell him?
I would tell him to, try to go and stand in the back, like you said, and to say, so what, and who cares to themselves a lot, that if they have to leave, big deal, so you leave. Yeah. Come back again and try it again, but listen to what is going on. Get your mind off of yourself. And if you get your breathing correct, down to your belly, not breathing from your chest, if you relax yourself, if that person could think of themselves like a Raggedy Ann doll, when your stomach muscles are really relaxed, you breathe correctly. And when you breathe correctly, it sends a message to your brain to shut off the adrenaline and shut off the cortisol. And then you can't have a panic attack because your brain is not even sending the hormones for you to have a panic attack. And I want people to know that even, like this person, that when you start feeling panicky and your breath goes off, your body's actually trying to help you. Your body's always trying to help you. So it's perceiving it as you think you're in danger. So I'm going to shoot you some extra adrenaline so you can get the heck out of there. But the moment you change your breath and you calm it like if you think of a 2-year-old toddler standing there with its belly, the little rounded belly, they're breathing from their belly. Just like a dog, like a big golden retriever lying there. When you do a belly breath, you're relaxed. But when that baby cries and that dog barks, they're way up in their chest breathing because they are anxious. So you cannot have a panic attack or feel bad when you're breathing correctly. And you may have to correct that every 10 seconds, and that's fine. And then focus on something that's not on you. Put it on the altar. Really look at this. And I had to do this. I am not just, I've been through this myself. Years and years ago, I left church on Palm Sunday, and I didn't go back for many years. It was crowded. It was hot. I just wanted to get the heck out of there. And I didn't go back for a very long time. So I kind of know what I'm talking about because I've lived it. When I did go back, and I got my I did self-work on myself, I sat there and I thought, wow, aren't I blessed to be sitting in a place that this is a 2,000-year-old ritual. I am part of this. Every person in here believes what I believe. They believe in God and Jesus and Mary. And isn't this great that I have this to come to? I just changed my thoughts. And did it come easy? No. It helped a little. But each time I did it, I got stronger and stronger. And when you run away from something, it does make it worse. It makes you feel worse. And what if it happens again? And what if it happens again? But if you get the mindset, so what if it happens again? I'll stand in back, and I'll stand, I'll go outside, and I'll come back in. Don't care what people think. Don't care what other people think. You're doing this for you. You're doing this with God. Make a joke about it. I remember telling my priest at one time, I don't want to go because I may have to keep leaving. And he said, oh, that'll be fun to watch. We'll watch you leave. We'll welcome you back. Do whatever you have to do to make yourself comfortable. So there's many ways of handling it. But I think if you make light of it and you don't make it so heavy that what's wrong with me? Why can't I sit in church? Oh, my gosh, you're not alone. You're not alone. There are so many people that sitting, not just in church, but it's a meeting at work. It could be anything like that where you're getting up and leaving. People are going to turn and look at you, and that makes people feel uncomfortable.
But a lot of people leave not because of claustrophobia. They just don't like my sermons.
And maybe they just... maybe that's it.
But I like what you talked about. The underlining factor of my claustrophobia is my fear that I have, the fear of dying, and a question of faith. A lot of people believe, but they don't really have faith. There's a difference between that. Well, thank you very much for calling, and I appreciate that insight. And I hope we can talk again at the next show. Okay?
Thank you, Father Ed.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Is there another call? You're number one on the line. Hello?
Oh.
Are you there?
I am, yes.
Okay.
Yes. Father, I had a question for you regarding your... I know you've been very, very active over the years, and I know the Good News Fund has done some amazing things. The question I have is really regarding millennials and expanding, and certainly the church's outreach to millennials. And I just wanted your opinion on it. And I know that there is certainly many, many movements out there that engage millennials. And I just wanted your opinion with regards to the Good News Fund and their quest over the last, say, 30 years for evangelization and for promoting justice. And I know that as a general rule, millennials do engage in fights for justice, but they're not as engaged as, say, baby boomers were. And I just wanted your opinion on that.
Oh, that's a good point. And that's where I'm in my own little ghetto. I'm in my Catholic ghetto, and I try to reach out to them. But that's where I need to expand. When we talk about the church being Catholic, that means universal. That means including millennials. And what I need to do is get a lot of help from people. How do we reach out to them? I mean, they're not interested in Jesus Christ. They're not in the Catholic Church. They may be interested in stories about pedophile priests, but they also have to look at 1 out of 3 girls are molested in their homes, 1 out of 6 boys. But how do we get them to be interested in the spiritual? That's by going to where they're at. What are they interested in?
Well, I mean, there's areas certainly where the church there's areas of interest that converge that can be great opening points. Certainly, the fight for the environment is a universal message, and it is an area that could be an opening for bringing millennials and certainly anybody that may be on the fringes or on the outside of the faith to understand that the church certainly promotes the preservation of the environment.
Yeah, if all they have to do is listen to Pope Francis, if they ever listen to him. That's one of his pet peeves is condition of the earth now and what's going to happen to us over the next few years if we don't shape up. We could see tidal waves. We could see Saharas all over the place, deserts. We could see people dying for the lack of water and so forth. And he's got us out there now. But there's so much denial of what's happening. But we got islands now that are being flushed with water, and people have to go out, and the Pacific have to leave the islands because of the waves and tsunamis that are destroying them. Yeah,
and that certainly ties in with your life's work, and certainly with the Good News Fund and their efforts to combat hunger, starvation, to provide clean water, certainly to empower people to reach for certainly a higher purpose than themselves. And I certainly know with millennials, again, as a very, very strong opportunity, because most millennials are anchored in a fight for justice. If there's any one overriding theme that people have been able to pin on millennials, is that they tend to be more experiential versus mechanical. People in the 80s were more oriented towards, okay, we're going to go out and focus on earning money and really money at any cost. Millennials seem to be more, probably as a backlash, seem to be more issue-oriented. They're more cause-oriented, and there's a tremendous amount of areas, certainly that the church's teachings all along, as well as the ideals that the Good News Fund has promoted, where they converge. And the environment's an easy one. Certainly, drug addiction, another easy one. The efforts that are underway to legalize marijuana nationwide, they're not driven in any kind of a health concern. They're driven in an economic benefit to the communities. And if you're going to take the government's advice towards what is good for you to engage in simply because they're going to make more tax dollars on you, it's a ludicrous argument. And again, these are areas where certainly the millennials can be brought in to be part of a robust debate.
Yeah, anything pertaining like the problem of sex, and we thought that AIDS was gone and sexual diseases are gone. Now they're way up as ever. Getting the millennials to look at the fact that freedom is not doing whatever you want, but freedom is doing what you want. And until they have that change of mentality, that one kid says, well, I could do whatever I please. I said, your freedom ends at the point of my nose. You can't get any closer to my nose. So this whole attitude of freedom, they have a wrong conception and understanding of what freedom is. But what you mentioned...
and again, freedom is not just it's not a blank check. Freedom has costs associated with it, and if it's not freedom that it is thought through, you're going to end up driving off a cliff somewhere, and that's what generally seems to happen when it is certainly unbridled.
And that's the scary part. Well, good. Maybe we can sit down and talk some more if you have the time. And I'd love to sit down with you and pick your brains for how the Father Nadali Good News Fund could reach out beyond the church pews and get beyond the pews that are out on the street there.
Well, I think, Father, I think you know firsthand very, very well. I certainly have been a big fan of yours for quite some time, and I've been following you for quite some time. And certainly I believe you and the Good News Fund have been far, far ahead of the curve in terms of where having a finger on the pulse of where the public is and what causes matter to people. And again, the higher goal of evangelization, it is incumbent on all of us as our own individual human beings to take our initiative to make sure we make the world a better place one person at a time. Right. And you've done this your entire life, Father. The Good News Fund is a vehicle by which you manifest a lot of these concerns, and even with your Billboard campaign, an enormous outreach that reaches people probably in their most desperate time of need, and every little effort even as small as something as a simple hello or a thank you to somebody can change the world around you. And most people, you've been doing this your whole life, but most people need to come back to that, because ultimately what they do to other people affects the world around them. But what the impact that society has and our commercial capitalistic environment has on people wants to train you to believe that everything is okay for you. Well, it's not. And we all have to live within our defined, we all know what's best for ourselves. And again, to take the high road is always better than assuming that anything goes and a low road is acceptable.
Yeah, right. Okay, thanks a lot for calling. I appreciate your call. And
thanks for everything you do, Father.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, by the way, if you just tuned in, my name is Father Edna Donnelly, and my telephone number is 860-321-7405. It's 860-321-7405. And we're live here. I may look dead to you, but we're very much alive. So if you have a call, have an opinion like we just had from our last caller, we would love to have you call. And while he was talking, and he said, you're touching someone, I remember two examples from Channel 8, Route 84 going east. One day I got a call from somebody who was on drugs, and he said, I said, where are you? He says, I'm walking on 84. And I says, are you on heroin? He said, yes. He says, I said, where are you going? He says, I have no idea where I'm going. And then, so we had a nice chat. And another one who called in, and this one touched me. He said, it was Christmas Eve, and I got a call. And he says, I have no one to go to. I have nowhere to go. I'm all by myself. So I listened to him for 40 minutes. All I could do is listen to him. And that was the best Christmas gift that he could have received, would find someone who would just listen to him. And his wife was dying in the hospital, and he felt helpless. There was no family to go to. He was absolutely helpless, lonely, and depressed. So that's one of the advantages of the billboards, that it gives them an opportunity to get in touch with someone. I don't know their names. They know mine because I'm humble and shy. I've got my name and telephone number all over the place. But I get calls so many times of people who are terribly lonely. And a lot of times kids call me. One guy called me up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and he says, I'm very lonely. I said, could you be lonely about 10 o'clock at night instead of 3 o'clock in the morning? And so I listened to him. But that's what the billboards are, a parish without boundaries. And I get calls for different, whether it's going to the Regency House down in Wallingford to see a woman who fell down in church, or going to Bloomfield to bless some families, or going to Avon to give the last sacraments to somebody who's dying. And so it really is, or the lady in Naugatuck who said, Father, would you come and bless my house? Like the people. By the way, I think I need a drink. Don't tell the bishop that I'm drinking on the job. But anyways, we only have about 9 or 8 minutes left. So if you'd like to call in, call me at 860-321-7405. Let me know there's somebody out there besides the Lord he's always listening to me, and I'm trying to listen to him. But next week, I hope if I get the clearance, this DVD, it says Abortion Procedures, abortionprocedures.com. You can look it up, abortionprocedures.com, and it's given by a doctor who did 1,200 abortions. And I figured he made about $960,000 because he got $800 per abortion. And this is a recent DVD. And what's good about it, it shows every single procedure that occurs. And the first semester, second semester, third semester abortion. And it does it in an animation way. It's done very, very cleverly, very distinctly, and with a lot of compassion. And it's really worth seeing. So if I get clearance next week, next time I come, I hope I come before Jesus returns. It's really a great educational tool. So I'd like to have every parent and every child, teenager, look at this. So if you could send the word out, and it'll be announced the next show I will have on. But this Sunday was the Feast of Three Kings. Sometimes they call them kings. Sometimes they call them magi. Sometimes they call them astrologers because they're following the star. So they're looking for Jesus, and the star says, go to Bethlehem. But they bump into a couple people. They bump into Herod. Now, Herod's a real bad guy. He killed his wife because he was threatened by her. He killed his two brothers because he was threatened by them. And then he hears about this child to be born, the Messiah, the Savior, the Anointed One. So he panics. Now the three kings come walking up to him and tell him, well, we're looking for the child, the Messiah. And he says, where he's going to be born? In Bethlehem. So he says, okay, you guys, you go out and see him, and then come back and tell me. Now his intention was to kill anyone who's a threat to his throne. Now the other characters in this story are the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Now they are completely indifferent to the coming of Jesus. And they couldn't care less because they thought that the Messiah would be a conqueror, knock out the Romans, and become king themselves. So they're indifferent to Christ. Now the third person were the three kings. Now the three kings, some say, came from Asia, Persia, Ethiopia. And they came as a story that Christ came not just for the Jews, but he came for the Gentiles, everybody else that was a non-Jew. So they represented all of us, we who are non-Jewish. So Christ came not only for the Jews, but he also came for us. But what they brought was three gifts: gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Now those three gifts really tell us a lot about Jesus. Now the gifts that you receive at Christmas tell you a lot about you. I bet you don't know how many sweaters I got in 60 years as a priest. And if you tell me to get within 10, I'll take you out to McDonald's. So my telephone number is 860-321-7405. How many sweaters did I get that indicate what people tell me about my personality? Well, just take 60 years and multiply it times 3, and you get 180 sweaters. And this is one of them that I'm wearing right now. So what does that sweaters tell me about? Either I have a warm heart or I have a cold heart. But it told me something about me. So the three gifts tell us something about who this child of Bethlehem is. He is first gold. Gold is a sign of kingship. Yes, Christ is the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords. The second one, the incense, is a sign that Christ, Jesus, is divine. And then the myrrh is a sign that Jesus is mortal. He's going to suffer and die. So the whole story of Jesus' life is found in the gifts that Jesus receives. So, but then apply that to your own life. The gold of faith that you got, the incense of hope, and the myrrh of faith. Faith, hope, and love. Those are the three gifts that you have. And you're called, epiphany means to manifest, to show off, to reveal what the qualities that you have. And you have the gift of faith, the gift of hope, and the gift of love in each one of you. And that's the gift that God has for you. So closing now, we have 1 more minute. So if you'd like to get in touch with me, just look at my billboard and call me at 860-335-2342. 860-335-2342. And I'd love to continue the conversation that began here at Nutmeg TV. And I hope to see you soon. And I'd like to show, if I can get the clearance on that movie, I'd like to show the movie. And it's tremendously educational, very touching, and very educational. That you'll be surprised at the 3 types of abortions for the first semester, second semester, and third semester. In the meantime, I ask you to pray with me for our country. Pray with me for the Democrats and Republicans who are acting like children, that somehow they'll get together and make a decision on the wall. So Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. And one of my favorite prayers is a short one. Jesus, I love you more today than yesterday, less today than tomorrow. I love you more today than yesterday, less today than tomorrow. So I hope to see you again, and I ask you, please pray for our country. Pray for our story I'll give you next year, next time. God bless you, and good night.